Scramble by I Had 'Em on the Ropes, Carter Reed, and Rory Gone Maddie, Roasted Days. Chapter 10, Day 737, Morning. "You were right, you know," Cal said as he sat down beside him, a calmness in his voice that Bruce hadn't heard in a while. "I usually am," the bat replied, modulator grating the syllables into unyielding sounds. A pause. "About?" he prompted. Clark smiled, a quiet, understated sort of thing. "Me," he murmured, "running from the reason why Lois and I broke up." The onset of winter was bearing down fast upon them, and the trees that filled the park stood bare, made ghastly by the faint orange glow of the street lamps. A frost was settling, and Bruce had spent almost an hour watching it blanket his city in a thin, translucent carpet of white. It was a white that wouldn't last under the boots of his people, but lay unsettled in the early hour. The city would wake long before the sun did, but Bruce wanted to watch the sunrise halo over the monoliths and dye the frost amber and red. Breath swirled before him, and he'd have been lost in memories of earlier, happier times in Wayne Manor, challenging his father to contests of who could produce the most impressive gush of breath. Even knowing the winter brought more difficulties, drawing out Gotham's selfish side, as she hoarded her shadows and darkness, instead offering enough white to thrust him into the light, Bruce couldn't help but enjoy the change in seasons. He'd been wrapped in quiet contemplation for a while, a silent guardian who seemed unneeded for the night, when Cal drifted downwards. Now he couldn't help but look at the alien, curious as to his intentions. Clark took that as an invitation to continue. "I was running," he breathed out. "From Wayne." He paused, head dropping a little. "I can't remember my first words to him, but his were... I know you've been reminding me that every day for 37 years. And when he said that, I forgot what I'd always known about those words. That for my soulmate they were everything." A wry smile crept onto his lips. "My ma always said that my soulmate was the first person I saved, and I believed it until it was Wayne," Bruce offered quietly. He felt no fear, no concern, nothing but quiet, understated contentment that seeped through his bones. "Until it was Wayne," Clark echoed. I know that the public is cruel and unforgiving, and that people are often not what they seem, but in all the years he's been in Gotham, did you know there's never been a good headline? If he's not making bad company decisions or fighting off an attempted coup by his board members who all claim incompetence, then he's gallivanting around Europe with Swedish models." There was a long sigh. "The day I met him, I'd just bought an engagement ring," he confessed, turning to lock gazes with the white lenses of the cowl. "It was in my pocket, and all I could think about was how Lois would never wear it. Then I thought about how I'd have to return it, and I was so angry that this man, who I had no respect for, was rearranging my life, and even without knowing it, he was demanding things of me I didn't want." He shook his head, casting his gaze out over Gotham. "I think I knew deep down that Lois and I weren't going to be forever, but I wanted us to be. She's smart and beautiful and kind and..." "Normal," Bruce finished. "And normal." A breath. "So I started running from it. From him. And I was certain that I'd never stop. Then I met you, Bee. And something clicked. It was like how I always imagined meeting your soulmate would be. You challenged me and annoyed me and demanded more, but you listened and encouraged and made me laugh, and even Lois noticed. She called me out a few times on talking about you. She even asked if you were my soulmate. It was why I ended up telling her about Wayne. I think even though she was mad, she was happier it was somebody like Brucey, because it meant it wasn't you. It meant there may have been hope for her and I. When we broke up, she was angry. You know that. But she said later that I was using Wayne as an excuse, that I'd already changed my mind about her. She called me a coward." A long, heavy sigh whistled through Clark's teeth, leaving a stream of air swirling before them. "And I wasn't sure if I was ever going to tell you, but Diana... Well, we all saw what happened there. But then you knew. And I'm not saying this to ask you to change your mind, B. I know where you stand. I also know that while you wouldn't lie to spare my feelings, you wouldn't be cruel either. You're too good for that. I do want to say sorry about the Arthur overreaction. I have no say in what you do, B. It was just a little jarring. I'm teaching him how to be a king, Bruce offered, taking pity on the superhero beside him. A superhero who had, slowly but steadily, been regaining Bruce's favor. They had lost most of the awkwardness that had lingered over them for so long, and were beginning to return to that easy friendship that had dominated so many months. Bruce's risk was worth it as Clark's expression, his incredulous surprise turning his features ridiculously close to that of an emoji, before softening tremendously mid a ghost of a smile flit over his lips. Of course you are, he murmured, affection leaking through every word. B, you're... He swallowed, shaking his head once. I won't ask you to change your mind. I just wanted to say that I'm going to clear things up with Wayne. I'm going to apologize. Victor and I, we did some digging, and, well, while there's a lot that guy hides, what we found was good. Charity donations and relief funds, the best workers' rights and wages in the country, not to mention the program he has for rehabilitating youth offenders. That's to say, he's not what I thought he was. I'm not ever going to love him, but I don't think I have to hate him or what he is anymore. And that's because of you, B. Because you called me out and made me see that what I was doing wasn't healthy. So thanks, he offered, smile gentle and just a little lopsided. Bruce took a long, deep inhale, pushing down the worry at Clark and Victor investigating him, and instead nodding once. That's mature of you, he murmured. The tension eased a little when Superman laughed, chest shaking with it. It took a while, he confessed. I mean, at first I was just going to get closure for myself. Al talked me into talking to Wayne without him knowing it was me, of course, he added, anticipating a worry that Bruce had forgotten he needed to fabricate. But I never thought about what type of closure he might need. His eyes were burning with a number of emotions that the billionaire wasn't sure humans could even understand, let alone experience. It was selfish not to think like that. In a way, I thought that maybe he wouldn't care. That me saying I didn't want that with him would be like water off a duck's back, he chuckled. I don't think it was, though. Even though Bruce already knew the answer, he asked anyway. What changed? Cal cast his gaze out once more to the horizon. There was a gala I was covering. It was at the time after we, had the disagreement about the kryptonite and me, doing something I wasn't supposed to. When you saved me so well, you then needed saving? Brentman clarified, and even with the cowl, he was sure the alien could see his bitch face. Yeah, well, that's beside the point, he huffed. It was that night. I was annoyed at you, again. And, well, I was hurt too. And I see Wayne there. I didn't even know he was involved with Ferris. And I figured that then was the best time to just do it. To walk up to the man and tell him that I didn't love him, that I'd never love him, but that I wished him well in life, that I hoped he could find someone who would love him for him, rather than for whatever the Swedish models love him for. Money and sex, usually, Batman interjected. And anyway, he plowed onwards, cheeks tinged red. He was his usual tabloid self, obnoxious and hitting on anything that moved. I was getting more and more irritated, more furious at the universe telling me that he was mine, when I noticed something. He turned to the Bat, smiling a little brighter now. You'd have been proud, he added. I was perhaps the world's second-best detective then. Cull. He wasn't drunk, Clark said. Not even a little bit. He was stumbling around as though he'd drunk half of the wine cellar, but I could tell he hadn't had anything, and I wondered then, why? Then I wondered if he did that often, pretend to be drunk when he wasn't. A pause. Did you know that every time W.E. proposed a significant project that improved society but dented their bottom line, Wayne did something outrageous and stupid? I thought it was a coincidence at first, but all those things Victor and I found, the workers' rights, the living wage, the relief charities, if they received resistance from the W.E. board, then within days. Wayne was embarrassing the company just enough for them to jump on the project so to regain standing. And I think he knows that. I think he knows that the world doesn't take him seriously because he's underqualified or because of past indiscretions. I'm not sure. But I'm sure he's aware of being the butt of every joke. And I think he knows that he can get more done by forcing the board's hand than by trying to make the world see him as something more than a trust fund. Only the low hum of Gotham replied, Batman too focused on keeping himself from laughing in disbelief at the frenetic speed of his heart and the fact his soulmate had finally decided to act as an investigative journalist.
That's an interesting story, he eventually replied, so incredibly grateful for the modulator that hid the wavering and cracking in his voice.
World's second best detective, Superman replied before glancing up and away, beyond Gotham to whatever crisis was beckoning him. He turned back, though, hesitant.
Go, Cal,
Batman ordered, a smile, wistful and relieved, before Superman flashed out of sight. Batman followed as quickly as he could, wheels of the Batmobile decimating the thin frost he'd so painstakingly watched being formed. He felt a tightness in his chest he couldn't name. It felt like panic, but more. He felt like screaming. He felt like giggling hysterically. He felt like punching Clark in the face before dragging him in for a kiss. His soulmate was an idiot. A morally superior, frightened, jealous, good-hearted, judgmental idiot. But still, his idiot. Alfred would know what to do. He'd know how to make it better. He tore into the cave a little too fast if the cracking in the shielding and the dangerous swing of the lights were any indication.
Might I suggest not destroying the entire place, sir?
Alfred snarked, peering around the monitors.
We wouldn't want Wayne Manor collapsing on us, would we?
He paused, taking in Bruce's stance.
Oh, for goodness sake, don't tell me,
he said, throwing his hands up in irritation.
Clark!
He wanted to talk about his feelings for me, Bruce replied, not even the modulator crunching the words enough to dissipate the conflicting irritation and confusion there.
Well, I daren't ask what he said this time,
Alfred muttered. Bruce scowled, pulling up the cowl.
Something tells me you already have an idea,
he snorted, dragging a hand through his hair.
If you knew what was good for you, Master Wayne, then you wouldn't ask my opinion on him.
Bruce couldn't help but laugh, the pain in his chest easing at the intensity in which his mentor defended him.
Of course,
he smiled, rolling his eyes.
Right now, if Batman didn't work with him, I'd be more than happy not to think about him or this love triangle insanity for at least a month.
Master Wayne, Alfred retorted, picking up a mug of what appeared to be tea and storming off.
I'd more than happily never talk of it again.
Amen, he muttered, dropping the cowl before heaving out a weighted breath.
This was a lot easier before you were apparently dateable,
he accused the empty cowl.
We could just be lonely old people together, content without soulmates.
You better not be calling me lonely, Alfred said, bursting back into the room as though remembering he'd left Bruce there.
Or old,
he added, ushering his ward upstairs.
Master Wayne, we cannot spend any longer in this awful cave. Come on, I'll make pancakes, and I suppose we'll have to discuss the Batman-Superman mess too.
He gestured to the stairs before pausing and adding loudly,
You better not just leave the armor lying about, sir, or you'll be making your own breakfast.
Bruce rolled his eyes, but did, of course, what his mentor demanded. After all, Alfred often knew best.